Chapter 41. Attack 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Despite that failure, Billy insisted, based on what he had experienced so far, the really good effects and skills would cost 100 skill points. So, after making the amulet reach level 10 and finding the same options as in the ring, Billy focused on making the amulet level up. It took a month, but he eventually found what he wanted, but Iron Amulet. LV20 Magic plus 02 Durability. May 5th L.C Status Points. 50 Effects. Automatic Meditation LV01, 100 Skill Points. At the cost of 100 skill points, the king granted him the power to enter into meditation state. So, Billy could recover 1 extra point of mana per hour. It was better than nothing, but it would take a while for him to reach level 40, and while he used the status points to increase the bonus in magic, Billy wasn't using that much these days. In any case, I should be glad that I increased the amount of mana that I can by 50%. Billy thought. Actually, since Billy spends 2 hours in daily meditation, he recovered 2 times more than that. Still, with his busy life, soon, he wouldn't be able to count on that all that much. While Billy was wondering what would be the best method to proceed, one day, all the post leaders were called to the mansion of the Lord. Nothing happened lately, so that was unusual. I guess something is about to happen. I need to prepare myself, Billy thought. After thinking for a while, Billy wondered if he should buy several rings and make them reach level 20. That would save some mana because increasing the meditation level of a single item would be way more expensive. If only the stone rings he tried to make had other status aside from durability, he wouldn't have to save money. It was weird since the weapons were made of stone and granted other attributes. Maybe the materials of the weapons and the city were different. I guess that makes sense. If the walls were made of the same material as the weapons, they would be way sturdier, Billy thought. Regardless, a few hours later, Drew returned while showing a serious explanation and called all the guards for some reason. As expected, Billy's intuition was right, but he didn't expect to hear what he heard. "We are going to attack the elementalists," Drew said. "The escorts confirmed that they are preparing themselves for an all-out attack and we can't let that happen. It is time to put them in their place." The guards roared in excitement. After all, it was the first time they had the chance to be on the attacking side. Billy, on the other hand, wasn't that excited. Fighting to protect was everything he had done until now, but now he was going to fight to destroy. He will have to go down on the same level as the enemies. That didn't seem right. However, after thinking for a while, Billy realized that it was the chance for his tribe to get their revenge for decades of suffering. Not to mention, by getting rid of that problem, they will have the chance to expand their horizons. Exploration, the chance to cultivate in the areas nearby, and find more resources, many options will be open to them. Only the recruits that are good with bows will come with the attack group, Drew said. Aside from them, only those who are older than 15 can come. If you think that you aren't ready yet, you can say now. Billy didn't know if that was his father's strategy to make everyone go, but it was hard to imagine someone raising their hand and saying that. In the end, no one said. No one looked afraid either. In fact, they were looking forward to the fight. In the end, even Alexander was selected to go, even though his skills with a bow were just average. He didn't know the multiple or the rapid fire skills, but it looked like Drew wanted as many archers to back them up as possible. "You didn't look as excited like the others today," Drew said when they were heading home. "You don't look like someone who would feel nervous, though." Billy wondered if he could talk with his father about that. Descending to the level of the enemies didn't feel good, unless they exterminated the elementalists, which was bound to cause trouble later. "I can guess what you are thinking, but we are part of a larger group and we aren't the ones calling the shots," Drew said. "We have to follow our orders because the Lord and the people of this town took us in when we needed their help." Billy was aware of that. It wasn't like he didn't want to participate in the mission no matter what. He was just a bit troubled over it. He didn't lose anyone close to him since he was born in that world, so his desire for revenge was weak. Regardless, Alexander was going, and Lily will definitely go as well. As for Natalie, it was hard to say. With that in mind, Billy had to do his best to make sure that his group of misfits wouldn't suffer any losses. Increasing his level on a single night was impossible, but Billy could improve his stone bow. Still, it won't last for long if it doesn't increase its durability. He won't be able to just increase its firepower. Chapter 42. Attack 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After explaining that they would leave for a few days, the family didn't look that pleased since the fight would be dangerous. Still, Anna gave Drew and Billy some ointment to use. According to her, it could save their lives under the right circumstances, but it was hard to imagine it being able to heal the wounds caused by stone bullets. The next day, they left around the same time they would leave to work, but they headed toward the eastern entrance. Upon arriving there, Billy found the other 3 misfits ready to go. Come to think of it, Billy was already 11, so Natalie was 14, and with her strength, it wasn't weird that she would go as well. Not to mention, her father died at the hands of the elementalists. Even members that usually guard the walls at night were there. So, the group had around 150 people guards ready to depart. While Billy wanted to take his spear, the recruits that had bows were ordered to carry only their bows and around 4 quivers of arrows. So, he didn't have room to carry anything more. You look quieter than usual, Lily said. Didn't you kill 5 of them before? I am not having second thoughts. I suppose an airhead like you wouldn't understand, Billy shrugged. Usually, Lily would get mad, but her parents were nearby, so she controlled herself. Billy didn't see her mother before, but they looked quite a bit. In any case, Billy got more interested in Natalie's mother, but not in a weird way. Apparently, she was the nocturnal leader of the guards of her tribe, and unlike her daughter, she got along with the others. In any case, she had very short blonde hair, and she was pretty slim as well. Billy could tell by her demeanor that she was skilled, but not the strength type, like her daughter. In any case, it was confirmed that they had a difficult relationship since they were keeping their distance. That was hard to see since his family decided to adapt, and only Natalie on the Light Seekers was trying to do that. Regardless, Billy thought that the leaders of each tribe would have a meeting to decide their plan of action. Still, it looked like everything had been decided by the lord of the town, even before the mission started. That wouldn't give much room for improvisation when the battle starts, and that was worrisome. Alongside the Hammersmiths, we will attack the front of the enemy's base, Drew declared. The other groups will move and approach following a different route and offer us backup once we get the enemy's attention. We will have to travel for a few days, so watch your pace. In the end, Billy would only work with Alexander from his group of misfits. He wasn't much worried about Lily since she was getting more motivated to train and her father was with her. Still, things were a bit more complicated with Natalia. She was getting stronger, and the skill she developed was sharpening, but she could only do so much by herself. Hopefully, the situation with her mother isn't as bad enough for her not to look after her in case something happens. Although the excitement of the group could almost be seen, the guards from the tribe and the Hammersmith groups traveled for several hours in total silence. That being said, Billy couldn't tell if it was due to the anxiety and expectation or if it was due to the fact that both groups didn't know how to work together. Things might get messy this way, so perhaps I should use some status points, just in case, Billy thought. Billy. LV 53. 780/5200 EXP HP 143/143 MP 307/307 SP 147/147 Strength. 60 Speed. 53 Magic. 136 Endurance. 25 Dexterity. 22 Status Points. 70 Skills. Deadly Wind LV 10, Steel Spear LV 08, Light Spear LV 06, Spells. Mana/EXP Conversion LV Infinity, EXP Master LV Infinity, Analyze LV22, Appraisal LV25, Meditation LV23, Earth Manipulation LV12, Passive. Language Skill LV45, Spearmanship LV30, Swordsmanship LV15, Archery LV25, Firing Speed LV13, Quick Spear LV07, Block Mastery LV01. Skill Points 145. Suddenly increasing his speed and strength would be way too suspicious, so Billy only increased those by a few points and added 15 on endurance. That should make him sturdier, and that also was something hard to explain and notice by others, so it was fine. What do you think their base is going to look like? Alexander asked. Considering that they can manipulate the ground to move pretty fast, I would say that it will be, not much different from our town, Billy replied. They can essentially turn the ground and change its shape the way they want, after all. After hearing himself, Billy wondered if some traps were waiting for them, perhaps not. The elementalists never had been attacked, after all. There was no reason they would use traps, even against the beasts that roam in the world. They probably can kill them with their elemental manipulation, even at a low level. It didn't take long for the group to reach the forest that the tribe used years ago as their base. After a while, they even crossed their old home. Drew passed through without looking toward the destroyed huts that once belonged to them. Pretty much everything had been burned down to the ground, which was weird since Billy didn't hear about the elementalists using fire. As soon as they crossed that area, Drew and the leader of the Hammersmiths gave the sign to their allies to stop. Before departing, they gave the group only 2 orders. If they see the leaders grabbing their weapons and running to the sides, they should prepare themselves because it was a sign that the elementalists were nearby, but if they didn't and grabbed their weapons anyway, it was a sign that the magical beasts were nearby. Chapter 43. Attack 3. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Billy prepared an arrow and almost fired when he saw some things moving in the distance. However, he frowned when he saw that the magical beasts were only 1 meter wide and tall. They were also only half a meter tall creatures that looked like spiders due to their fur, but their bodies were also covered with the scorpion dot-like carapace. After the first monster, 4 others appeared and approached slowly, but the leader of the Hammersmith swung his hammer and smashed all of them with ease. It seems that their population decreased a lot in the last few weeks. Drew said. The scouts never informed us that the population of magic beasts had decreased. After dealing with those monsters, they were attacked by small groups in the same condition, they were too weak to do anything. It seemed that the elementalists probably got rid of most of that species. In any case, the group had to walk for 3 days before they managed to cross that forest, and once they did that, they saw an arid area filled with some big rocks and hills deprived of any vegetation. In the distance, the heat was so strong that Billy could see things vibrating, it was just an illusion due to the heat. In any case, that area wasn't a place where people actually could live normally. During the day, the sun would be hellish, and at night, the area would be pretty cold. Why didn't they move to the forest over the last few years? Billy wondered. We will rest here for the time being and then move again after sunset, Drew declared. Rest as much as possible because the enemy base is nearby and we will attack it tonight. A night raid, it was probably the best method to deal as much damage as possible against an enemy that was stronger and had all the advantages possible on their side. Physically they were weaker and slow, but by sticking together, they would be able to rain down stone bullets on their enemies while they also blocked their advance with earth walls. In any case, despite Drew's orders, the guards couldn't just fall asleep so far away from home. They were too excited to let that happen. Even Alexander was like that despite his timid nature. As the sun began to set, the temperature began to decrease drastically. Once the surroundings got completely dark, Billy and the others could only see each other clearly when they were nearby. Despite that, moving wouldn't be so hard due to the light of the stars and the moon, it was a night of full moon. Is it the same size as the moon of the Earth or it looks like that because of the distance? Billy wondered. Such thoughts disappeared from his head when the group began to march. After 5 hours, the group finally could see some kind of structure made of earth in the distance. It didn't take long for them to realize that it was the enemy base. The place wasn't as big as their town, it had around half of the size, but the walls were 2 times taller. Climbing that won't be impossible, but it will be hard while the enemies attack. Just like the guards that work at the night duty in their base, some of the enemies were walking around the walls with torches, but their numbers were small. "We will wait for 1 hour and then we will attack," Drew declared. "The recruits will offer us support from behind, your job is to keep the guards busy while we climb the walls. After that, we will open the southern gate. The Lord said that we should only kill those who resist, those who drop their knees and surrender, should be taken as prisoners. If you can avoid it, don't kill kids, unless they are skilled at using magic and try to kill you." That was unexpected. No one complained about that, even though all tribes had a bad history with the elementalists, a bad history of decades. The guards in the walls didn't look particularly worried, so it was a sign that the other groups weren't noticed. In any case, Billy wondered if they were in position. It was impossible to tell, after all. Neither of the tribes could use magic, and until now, Billy saw only some very simple applications of it. Around the time the group finished their preparations, they began to hear some noise coming from the elementalists' town. When Billy looked toward it, he saw the guards moving to the east and west side of the town. "Now! Run as fast as you can!" Drew declared. The other 2 groups had attacked at the same time, that sure was one heck of a coordination. Nevertheless, the 2 groups began to charge toward the enemy camp. Although they advanced without making any noise, eventually, the enemies noticed a new group approaching, but the number of guards was too small for them to do anything. When Drew got close enough, he jumped and then got stuck in the wall like a beetle. Despite not having many places he could use to grab and put his feet, he still began to climb. In an instant, he was halfway through the wall, but then Billy saw a guard approaching him. After taking a deep breath, Billy knocked an arrow and fired in a single motion. The projectile flew in a straight line and pierced the head of the enemy. Billy gulped for a second when that happened. There was no time to ponder about that, but he was getting good at killing with the bow. Some other guards approached instead of attacking from a distance for some reason, but a rain of arrows stopped them. Several other warriors of the tribe followed Drew, but the Hammersmiths were getting behind since they were big and slow. Despite that, Drew arrived at the top of the wall and then began to slaughter the few guards there. Chapter 44. Attack 4. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. At close range, the elementalists had no time to attack Drew. With the arrows falling around them, their only option was to run away and block the path with earth walls. However, their low numbers and the fact that the others were quickly climbing the walls prevented them from even doing that. The 5 or so guards died, and Drew and the others opened the gates before reinforcements could arrive. However, when Billy and the other recruits crossed the gates, the inhabitants had left their houses in large numbers and began their retaliation. Half of the stone bullets being fired at them were light and slow. Only the other half had any real power behind them. As expected, not all of them can actually fight, Billy thought. Billy quickly recognized the most dangerous enemies and began to shoot arrows toward them. His precision was so scary that he made the targets fall one after the other with a single arrow each. Those who weren't used to fighting froze on the spot while looking at someone who could easily put an arrow on their heads. They began to tremble violently. "Bend your knee and close your eyes. If you do so we will spare you," Drew shouted. It seemed a bit too soon to surrender, but when the non-combatants saw Billy knocking another arrow, they felt shivers and dropped to their knees. However, some of them fired stone bullets toward him, and to make matters worse, a new group was approaching insanely fast while they were manipulating the ground. Before the projectiles could hit him or even Billy could jump to the side, his father approached and spun his spear around, blocking all the stone bullets. When the other group approached, though, they fired earth spears toward the enemies. At that moment, the Hammersmiths stepped forward and swung their weapons, and destroyed those big projectiles. The sound of the impact had been so powerful that both sides got surprised. The recruits reacted when Drew and Nicola began to run toward the enemies and fired arrows toward them. The elementalists froze since enemies were coming from the front, and the arrows were above to fall on them. Still, they did the usual. They created earth walls to block the charge and used gusts of wind to repel the arrows. While that worked for them to protect themselves, it didn't go so for long. Billy was within their range and used earth manipulation without letting anyone notice. By manipulating the ground below the earth wall, he made it tremble. Drew saw the wall moving a bit and attacked with light spear, making the wall fall on them. Despite that group didn't die and quickly got up while firing earth bullets. Those guys won't surrender. Billy knew that, so he fired arrows toward their heads while Drew blocked the projectiles with his spear. Congratulations! You have leveled up. You obtained 0.5 status points. You obtained 0.5 skill points. Again, Billy felt troubled. Until now, he had leveled by training hard and using the system, but now he was being rewarded for killing people, which sure was messed up. The recruits will stay here and keep watch on the prisoners. You can attack them to kill if they do anything suspicious, Drew declared. Come with me, Billy. Billy had already used 2 quivers full of arrows, but Drew got one from Alexander and from another recruit and gave it to Billy. While it was weird to bring an archer when they were going to attack the other elementalists on the other battlefields, no one thought that Drew was giving favoritism to his son. They knew that Billy had killed more enemies than anyone, after all. Even though he looked a bit tense. The group headed toward the northern side of the town, and there they found a few groups trying to run away. They had never experienced the terror of being attacked in their homes, and most of them were sleeping 10 minutes ago, so they immediately decided to run away. Some of the elementalists raised earth walls to protect themselves, but the Hammersmiths easily destroyed those. Their magic wasn't on the same level as the others who attacked their base so many times. NV. We will take care things here. One of the other groups is probably having a hard time since we didn't find the usual enemies that we face. The leader of the Hammersmiths said that, and since they were slower, it would be best for Drew and his tribe to go and help the other groups. Since they attacked first, they probably had to deal with many more enemies. Regardless, Drew nodded and led his group to the east side of the town, and after just a couple of minutes, they found the light seekers having a hard time facing the elementalists that were shooting fireballs toward them. One of the elementalists noticed the arrival of a new group of enemies, but instead of warning the others, he just turned around. Something was off, Billy knew. However, the others dashed toward the enemies. Billy decided to take down that guy, but before he could fire, several spears emerged from the ground and attacked the members of his tribe. Drew and Nicola reacted on time to jump backward, but 2 spears still pierced their feet and made them grunt in agony. At the same time, 3 others had their stomachs pierced the earth spears and died almost instantly. The ones who were behind hesitated. Finally, one of the strongest elementalists appeared, and approaching wasn't a good idea. Billy aimed his bow and fired an arrow, but the enemy made 2 earth spears emerge. One of them blocked the arrow, and the other almost impaled Billy. However, he felt the vibration on the ground and jumped backward to dodge the attack. Chapter 45. Cooperation 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Billy didn't know who that person was, but he knew that they could be taken lightly. His arrows wouldn't hit no matter what, but if he focused as much as possible, he would feel the vibration in the ground and see when the attack would come. The only problem was how he could attack it. While Billy was thinking of that, one of the members of his tribe screamed in agony when an earth spear suddenly appeared and pierced its stomach. He wouldn't have time to think, he had to keep that guy busy. So, Billy threw away his bow and picked his father's spear without hesitation. Billy, what are you thinking? Drew muttered with a pale expression, unable to move his feet due to the pain. BL.net. The wound was big, that wasn't good. He had to be treated as soon as possible. Otherwise, his father might get some lasting damage. Nevertheless, Billy began to move toward the enemy, and while he was in a hurry, he couldn't just dash toward that guy. If he isn't cautious enough, he won't notice the enemy's attacks. However, his opportunity came sooner than imagined. He felt the ground trembling below him, and instead of jumping back, he charged forward. When the earth spear appeared, Billy was already swinging his toward the enemy. However, that elementalist reacted fast enough to raise an earth wall and block his path when he was just 5 meters away from him. Billy used light spear, but the attack only cracked the wall. He didn't stop there, though. He tried again and again, and after the 4th attempt, the wall began to fall. The elementalist jumped backward to escape from the debris, and he immediately fired some earth bullets toward Billy. He couldn't understand how and why, but the enemy could predict his moves. With that in mind, he decided to fire his fastest attacks. Billy made the spear spin just like his father did a while ago, but since he wasn't used to that kind of move, he only blocked a few stone bullets. Still, the ones that hit him didn't hurt his head, only the external part of his arms and legs. The elementalist increased the speed of their attacks, and Billy's HP began to drop too fast. In the end, he changed his posture. Blocking wasn't a good idea, so he put his spear below and behind him. After getting hit in the stomach twice, Billy charged and used steel spear. The enemy wasn't close enough for his attack to beat them, but it raised a curtain of dust. The enemy stepped backward and covered his eyes for a moment to prevent them from getting blinded. At the same time, he used earth wall to block Billy's path. It was evident that he would attack soon after. The attack indeed came, but not from the direction the elementalist was expecting. Using deadly wind and putting all his strength on his legs, Billy jumped over the 3-meter tall wall and then attacked the elementalist, making his spear pierce their throat. His attack made the cloak of the enemy fall, revealing the face and agony of a kid that was probably as old as Natalie. For a moment, Billy felt the strength leaving his arms. He had just killed a kid, but then he recalled that his father suffered damage that could have stopped him from walking normally. So he didn't pull back his spear until the enemy was dead. The remaining elementalists that were facing the light seekers turned around in shock when they noticed that one of their best had been killed. Still, that had been a bad mover. They stopped their attack and gave Natalie's group the chance to attack. Billy finally saw her. She was one of those leading the charge. Aside from some small burn marks on her arms, she seemed fine. While being wary of their back due to Billy and unable to face the light seekers properly due to that, the elementalists tried to resist, but once half of that group fell dead, the others had no other choice but surrender. Helping the redhead archers would be difficult since many members of the tribe were wounded in their legs and the light seekers also suffered a lot in the hand of the fire attacks. Despite that, the redhead archers appeared soon enough, and aside from a few casualties, they won. The entire group had taken over the enemy town. The entire operation didn't last even half an hour, and that confirmed what Billy had thought. The elementalists didn't have many fighters on their side either, so why in the hell would they pick a fight with other tribes that were struggling as well? In any case, the prisoners were put in the center of the town and under the aim of dozens of bows. Most of the most experienced fighters on their side had been killed, but even the ordinary ones had the power to kill a distracted soldier. Meanwhile, the wounded were being treated, and Billy was helping his father in dealing with the wounds on his feet. He couldn't even stand without sweating bullets due to the pain. How would they return home like that? "You did a good job, Billy," Drew said. "Your battle sense is really something else. To be able to avoid so many attacks from that guy and then defeat him so fast, you really can take my..." "Shut up, you will recover from this," Billy said. "Granny has medicine that deals with this, no problem." Drew wouldn't die from those wounds, but maybe fighting. Billy could imagine what a warrior forced to retire would feel in that kind of situation. It was a pretty deep depression since they had been doing that for many years. He couldn't let his father become like that. Billy checked the elementalists one after the other with appraisal. He only saw them with skills like fire manipulation, water manipulation, wind manipulation, and earth manipulation. They didn't have spells like heal, first aid, or anything like it. The preparations for this type of attack had been shit. What the hell was the leader of the town thinking sending us here with only a small supply of medicine? Billy wondered while clenching his teeth. Chapter 46. Cooperation. 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The group checked the houses in the town, but they didn't find anything that valuable. The elementalists were as poor as the other tribes. No wonder, since they lived in such a dry place. Aside from their dark cloak, some rudimentary underwear, and meat of the monsters that they had killed in the area, they didn't have much. Everything else was made of earth magic: tables, chairs, tableware, pots, everything else was made of earth magic. While Drew was unconscious, Billy tried to see if he could learn by himself how to heal wounds with magic, but he couldn't control his mana unless he used it alongside earth manipulation. Leveling up his father would be pretty hard since he was at a high level, so that wouldn't help either. Billy checked the skill shop for anything that could, but he found nothing. Shit. Billy thought. Returning by himself while carrying his father wasn't an option since there were no carts around. The technology of that world truly sucked. Billy wondered if he should force one of the elementalists to teach him how they control mana, and then he would try to heal the wounds, but would things be that smooth? If that were something simple to do, they would have such power. Billy had some medical knowledge, very basic knowledge, but those applications would be useless since he would have to rely on mana, and that wasn't something that existed on Earth. Some rules must be the same, but most of the others probably aren't. Fortunately, Billy wasn't the only one with a brain in that place. The leaders of the other tribes knew that they couldn't stay in that place for long. The wounded wouldn't recover fast enough, and they had to bury their fallen comrades. So, they gave the order to the elementalists to make some stone carts, but since they weren't that usable, the elementalists would make them move with their magic. With those, they would be able to move the wounded and the deceased. At first, Drew refused that idea, but in the end, while he was the leader of his tribe, he still had to follow the orders of the leader of the Hammersmiths. There are a lot more prisoners than I thought, Alexander said when they began to leave the town. The number of soldiers that attacked the town was around 200, but 30 had fallen. As for the enemies, around 200 had been killed, but the number of prisoners was higher than 300. I can understand why you aren't happy, but you achieved a lot in this fight, Lily said. If you don't feel proud of that, you will only make your father feel miserable. Billy knew that, but he couldn't help it. He had heard that the kid he killed was the most talented elementalist their tribe had produced in decades. Someone that was bound to become their leader in the future, but all he could think now that he had cooled down was that he had taken many lives, and his reward was the possibility that his father would never be able to walk normally. Although Billy was in the group that was walking behind the prisoners, he still could feel some glares coming from them. It wasn't surprising, given how many he had killed. Still, he wasn't in the mood to be lenient enough not to care about that. When he glared back, most of them looked away, but a few didn't get intimidated over it. Even though they were too tired to fight and all their magic was being used to push forward the stone carts. Since they hurried and only took breaks for light meals and to drink water, the group shorted the trip back to half. Instead of 4 days, they were back in 2. The recruits that stayed behind celebrated it a lot on their return, and those who had lost friends and family glared at the prisoners. I wonder what the Lord is thinking of doing with them. We can't keep so many guards keeping their eyes on those guys forever, Natalie said. That was something that Billy would usually consider, but right now, he was more worried about hurrying to his grandmother and helping her treat the wounds of his father. In the end, the prisoners were put under the watch of a few dozen guards in the training grounds that the kids usually used. Since the prisoners were exhausted and didn't have much food for them on the way, the idea of fighting back wasn't even crossing their minds. What happened to you? Anna opened her eyes widely when she saw Drew's feet damaged. I was careless. I am sorry, Drew said while forcing a smile. Fortunately, Anna wasn't the only healer in the town. Otherwise, the wounded wouldn't have time to be treated, and many would have to endure permanent damage, if not death. Anna looked nervous, but at least she didn't look like she was treating something beyond her. In the end, Billy only had the chance to help with some basic things. After Anna made Drew drink some kind of tear, he fell asleep, and then she put some thick ointment on both sides of the wounds. This will be enough for the time being, you should go home and talk to your mother, Anna said. Will he be okay? Billy asked. He still is young, he can heal and recover from wounds like that, Anna said. He will probably stay out of combat for 6 months, but he will be back. Billy wondered if his grandmother was lying just to comfort him or if it was indeed the truth. In the end, she was a healer, and her job was to prevent deaths. Drew's life wasn't at risk, and it was evident that she would feel more relieved if her son-in-law didn't have to risk his life anymore. In any case, Billy headed home while hoping that Drew would be able to recover completely. Chapter 47. Cooperation 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as he arrived home, Billy gave a summary to his mother. After that, he cleaned his body and went to sleep. Even though it was still afternoon, he slept until the morning of the next day. Around the same time, Camilla was preparing to leave and check things with Drew, but she didn't want to take the siblings with her. Drew was a bit prideful, and he didn't want to show his weakened state to his other kids. BVEC, Billy, look after your siblings, okay? Camilla asked. Nicola passed here earlier and he said that you can rest for the week. Okay, Billy said. That was almost like a vacation. Billy never had so many days off. The twins protested and cried for a while, saying that they wanted to see their daddy, but eventually, Billy calmed them down. Things were a bit noisy outside, so Billy went to check and noticed that the kids of the tribe were training near their homes. The kids of the other tribes probably were doing the same. In any case, Billy didn't find any sign of Alexander or Nicola. Apparently, Billy was the only one who got some days off. Around lunchtime, Camilla returned, and she looked relieved. Apparently, she trusted Anna more than Billy did. He will rest alongside the others wounded away for 3 more days, Camilla said. Mother said that he would need a peaceful place to rest in order for the medicines to work properly. Billy nodded since it made sense, but he still decided to check things with his father by himself on the next day. Regardless, Alexander, Lily, and Natalie showed up when the sun set. They worked during the day guarding the prisoners, and only a small number of guards protected the walls. We heard that you gained some days off, Lily said. It seems that the grown-ups recognized your skills. Rather than that, how are things with the prisoners? Billy asked. Did the Lord already say anything? No. I heard some guards saying that he will wait for a while to weaken their spirits, Natalie replied. They are being given water and food, but less than necessary. It seems that the Lord truly wants to use them to do something, but he doesn't want to force them. It must be that. Lily said. East of here, there is a pretty large river that guards many magical beasts. I heard some people tried to cross it and then were killed. The river comes from the north and stretches to the south for many days of travel. I heard that around 3 weeks of travel, you can find something called the ocean, a massive body of water that also guards numerous beasts. I didn't hear anything about what lies in the north, though. That was the first time Billy had heard that, probably because his tribe was too busy trying to survive over the last few decades instead of exploring. Regardless, if he wanted the cooperation of the elementalists, couldn't he just have captured one? Maybe the bridge that the Lord was planning to make was massive, and he would need more than a few of them to make it. With the right skills and tools, Billy probably could make it, but it might take a few months or years, depending on the size of the bridge. Nevertheless, such things weren't bothering Billy. He was more worried about the fact that the Lord basically wanted to capture the non-combatants of the elementalists and make them his underlings, and while he achieved that, he sacrificed many lives. After 10 years, Billy realized that his tribe wasn't helped out of goodwill, which was expected, but it was annoying as well. The next day, Billy went to check with his father, and he sighed in relief since the area around the wounds looked a lot better than before. The color of the skin was starting to look like before. It seemed that I was being overdramatic before, Drew said. It will take a few months, but I will eventually return to fight. Yes, Billy nodded. Putting that aside, everyone has been praising you. I am proud, Billy, Drew said. You aren't the type who would get carried away, but I still need to warn you of something. The Lord will eventually call you to his mansion. I can see that you have your something in your mind, but you can't act based only on your interests. I know. I will keep my mouth shut, Billy said. For the time being, Billy almost let out these words. The standing of his tribe will probably improve from now on, so he couldn't say what he wanted to the Lord. At the very least, Billy knew that he would be rewarded for his recent accomplishments. Still, he didn't know what he should ask. He thought before that he would want some books about magic, but it would take a while to learn the written language of that world. In the end, 2 days passed, and his father eventually returned home, and the twins looked pretty happy, even though he couldn't move all that much. He also looked relieved, so things ended up well. The invitation to the Lord's mansion arrived on the next day for some reason. Even some guards appeared to escort him. That probably wasn't a problem, only a sign that the Lord was a busy person. Nevertheless, Billy frowned when he passed by the training grounds and found the remaining elementalists still there, and they looked more haggard than usual. Considering that at least 1/3 of them were children below 10 years old, Billy didn't want to believe that they decided to starve to death, or maybe the Lord was running out of patience. Chapter 48. Cooperarian 4, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Lord's mansion had walls that were as tall as the ones used to protect the town. While that wasn't surprising, what was surprising was the fact that only members of the Hammersmiths tribe worked there to protect the place. They were strong, but Billy didn't see one of them standing above the others. The other tribes had far more talented individuals. Although there was no garden between the walls and the mansion, it certainly had a space large enough for it. Billy assumed that the lord of the town didn't like decorations, but then he entered the building, and he changed his mind. In the walls, he saw several candle holders that looked made of silver, that made Billy frown. He had never seen silver or anything like it until now. As if that wasn't enough, he also saw several cases allocated around the mansion, and while they seemed old, they were being treated like relics. I guess there are old things that the people found while they were moving around. Billy thought. I don't remember ruins being mentioned, but they probably exist and the Lord likes to collect such things, even though the rest of the town pretty much lives with the bare minimum. Since he was the Lord, it was normal that his lifestyle would be different. Still. Billy shook his head to get rid of those thoughts. It didn't take long for Billy to reach a certain room on the other side of the mansion. That was fast. Billy thought he would see some servants or even the family of the Lord. But the place was weirdly silent. Sir, Billy of the Green-Eyed Spearman has arrived. That was the first time Billy had heard that. He didn't know that his tribe was identified that way, even though all of them indeed had green eyes. Enter, a rough voice echoed. Billy had seen some wooden doors in the town, but that one seemed a lot newer and flashier than the others. Nevertheless, he opened the door, and he saw a very rustic version of the offices Billy had seen in his previous life. Although there was a fancy-looking chair and table in front of him, Billy didn't find bookshelves or documents around. Instead, he found several types of weapons on the walls. Spears, glaives, long swords, curved swords, all of those looked pretty old, like hundreds of years old, but to some extent, they had been restored. On the other side of the table, Billy saw a tall and bulky man. While he had a round belly, he still had several muscles that showed that he had trained with the stone hammers for many years. His eyes were yellow-brown, and his head was completely shaved. You are young. My name is Edward and I am the lord of this town, Edward said and then pointed Billy to sit in one of the chairs in the room. It is nice to meet you. I heard a few things about your accomplishments from the leaders of the tribes. Yes, thank you for the invitation, Billy said. I heard from your tribe that you have mastered their type of training, but I also heard from my closest soldiers that you have a deadly aim with the bow, Edward said. It is very impressive that you have such skills at such a young age. I had good teachers, Billy said. Billy didn't like the destination of that conversation. Being praised wasn't bad, but he felt weird when a stranger was doing that since it was obviously a sign to make them get on his good side. Fortunately, Edward didn't continue doing that for long. I would like to see you reach new heights and I want to help you with that. Edward got up and then picked a dark glaive from the wall. This is the reward for your accomplishments in the last mission, Glaive of the Unstoppable. LV0 Strength plus 15, Speed plus 10 Durability. May 25th Effect. Recovery LV02, it restores 2 points of health per hour. Billy opened his eyes widely when he saw the effect of the spear. It was basically a weapon that increased by 3 times the recovery speed of the user. It was something that Drew would benefit from holding. Thank you very much, I will make good use of it, Billy said. The durability was a problem, but Billy could solve that problem by making the weapon level up. The more he increases its durability, the harder it will become and the less durability it will lose. Besides, now that he found such an effect, Billy probably could make it appear in other weapons. He will just have to have enough skill points. I am glad you liked it, Edward said. I had planned to end this conversation here, but after I heard a few other things about you, I realized that you could help me with something else. Is that so? Billy asked while frowning. Yes, I heard that you get along with kids of the other tribes and those became a lot skilled after becoming your friends, Edward said. With that in mind, I believe you wouldn't mind letting someone else join your group, someone from the Elementalists. Billy frowned when he heard that. Why would he welcome someone from the group that almost crept his father? While he was interested in their magic, he couldn't just get close to them after what happened. Not to mention, he killed one very famous member of the tribe, and a lot of people obviously hated him. The Elementalists are a group that we will need for the sake of the future, so we will have to forget our differences, Edward said. However, they are being more stubborn than expected, even their kids don't want to cooperate. Thus, I would like you to welcome some of them in your group and get close to them, make them feel welcomed and try to change the minds of the others as well. Chapter 49. Cooperation, 5, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Billy began to wonder what he should do. That was a mission given by the lord of the town, and while he doubted that things could go as smoothly as he had planned, it wasn't like he wouldn't gain anything in exchange. He might convince one of the Elementalists to teach him magic, and when they finished the bridge, he might have the chance to ask him to be part of the exploration group. As for the downsides, those who truly hated the Elementalists would look at him with wary eyes, but given his fame, they probably won't try anything. I don't know if I can succeed with that, or even convince them to join our side fast enough, Billy said. Besides, my father and many others were almost crippled by them. The adults will understand that this is necessary for the future of the town, Edward said. As for the matter of time, as long as we get the result in a few months, it will be fine. I am certain that the Elementalists will eventually cooperate. Still, I want them to become loyal to the town, and that is why you need to get close to one of them and make them change their minds from within. Is there any reason why they would be so stubborn? Even though most of the prisoners are just ordinary people? Billy asked. Yes, they had many reasons to act like that, Edward said and then sat down on his chair before letting out a long sigh. They had fewer numbers compared to us, and despite that, they attacked all the other tribes and put us against the wall with ease. Have you wondered why? Is it related to the past? Billy asked. Indeed, few people know that since most of our elders died fighting, but around 150 years ago, all the tribes in the area chased out the Elementalists to those harsh areas, Edward replied. At that time, we didn't understand their power, so they were feared. The tribes joined forces and made them move away. Thanks to that, in the last 50 years, they attacked all the tribes after sharpening their fangs and their desire for revenge. That sure complicated things. Neither side was right in that situation. The tribes couldn't pay for the crimes of their ancestors. Still, the elementalists could have gained some lands without waging a war that lasted for 50 years. Well, I will see what I can do, Billy said. What else can I say to make them understand that we want to leave the past behind? We have some residences ready for them, so they can use those immediately, Edward said. They also can join the Guard and the future expeditions to distant lands. As long as they are willing to cooperate, they will receive the same treatment as the other tribes. All right. I will try to use that, Billy said. To avoid problems and suspicions, I will send someone to give my report to you every week. Edward nodded, slightly surprised. Despite his young age, Billy sure was considering a lot of things. His head wasn't only good for combat. Nevertheless, Billy left the mansion after that. He was given an important task. It was also a pretty annoying one, but he was determined to make most of it. Putting Edward's expansion plans aside, Billy truly wanted to learn the magic of the elementalists, but how should he convince one of them to work with him? But now I have the perfect excuse to show my magic, Billy thought. Billy had a few days off to prepare, but since his work now will probably be guarding the prisoners for a while, he didn't have to hurry. Still, he decided to hurry because he couldn't waste his second life lazing around. He went to where the prisoners were and made the guards frown since he left with his glaive with the guards, and now he was unarmed, and going to such a place after what she did to them was dangerous. Billy couldn't just tell the others his orders, so things only looked weirder. Many of the prisoners recognized Billy and glared at him, but most of them also looked away when he returned the glare. Some of the youngest elementalists still kept at it, though. Probably because they admired the genius boy that he had defeated a week ago. Billy used appraisal on them and found a girl around that boy's age that had almost 1,000 points in mana, and she also could use the 4 elemental manipulations. She was probably the most talented individual of her generation now that the other body was dead. Also, her glare was especially vicious. She probably was close to that guy. "Hey, you, come over here," Billy said. The girl ignored Billy, and he just shrugged. He looked around them and noticed that the elementalists didn't look much like each other. The only characteristics that they shared in common were their pretty thin bodies and had no signs of developed muscles. Aside from that, Billy realized that they had a certain glint in their eyes, a light blue glint. Even though their colors varied, the glint was the same, probably because they could control mana really well. Nevertheless, the girl had long black hair and eyes of the same color. Although she was around 3 years older than Billy, it was hard to see it like that since the others looked more debilitated than usual due to the lack of food. In any case, Billy could use that. "Do you want to avenge that guy?" "This is your chance to do that," Billy said. "Duel with me." The guards and the elementalists frowned at the same time, but the guards knew that Billy had been called by the lord of the town that same day, so perhaps his actions had a meaning behind them. Regardless, the elementalists didn't take that lightly. It was a cheap taunt, after all. "Don't worry, they won't attack you if you mana to hurt me," Billy said. "So, what are you going to do?" Chapter 50. Cooperation, 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. One might think that Billy was starting to deal with the elementalists on the wrong way. Still, there was no other way to make them interact with him after what he did to many of them. He had a few months to make some of them change their minds, so that was fine. In the end, the girl got up and then approached Billy. It was clear that she wanted to skewer him with an earth spear, but she couldn't do that in a duel, at least not before the duel started. "The duel will be like this: if you manage to kill me, you win," Billy said. "If you don't manage to hit me even once after 10 minutes, I win. Since I won't be gaining anything by doing this and you can have your revenge, I also need to gain something out of this." So, if I win, you will explain to me how you guys use your magic for 1 hour. And if I refuse? The girl asked. Then I will kill the closest person to you. I hate liars, after all, Billy said. Besides, I can see that you are eager to follow his footsteps, so killing you won't change anything. The killing intent of the girl decreased a bit. She was prepared to get her revenge, but she didn't want to sacrifice the rest of her family for that. Unfortunately, retreating was no longer an option. The rest of the elementalists wouldn't forgive her for not even trying. In the end, she realized that even if she failed, there was no way someone outside her tribe would be able to learn magic, so she accepted Billy's terms. While facing each other at a distance of 10 meters, Billy gave the sign for the start of the duel. He didn't assume any combat stance. He just lowered his stance to be able to move to all sides as fast as possible. Just as he had expected, an earth spear emerged right below him, but he jumped to the side and dodged the attack instantly. While Billy didn't have any sensing skills because he could use earth manipulation, he could sense the same magic being used nearby him and thus dodge them before they took shape. It was hard to tell if the elementalists could do the same. If they couldn't, it was probably because another of Billy's skills were helping him to do that. Nevertheless, the girl didn't give up after that. She tried the same trick again and again until she confirmed that Billy really could anticipate her attacks for some reason. The other elementalists were speechless thanks to that. They didn't find anyone that could do such a thing against them, after all. Despite that, the girl quickly managed to find a way to counter Billy's evasive moves. She just had to seal all the possible places he could run away to. The next attack, she made 4 spears emerge around Billy to piece him from the sides. However, much to her surprise, one of the spears didn't go up, and Billy escaped using that route. This time, the girl was left speechless. Some of the old elementalists also looked like that since they knew what the girl tried. They also couldn't understand how Billy managed to interfere with her spells. That shouldn't be possible. All right, 10 minutes are up, Billy said. You lost, what are you going to do now? The girl didn't have many options aside from clenching her fists and teeth in anger and following the rules that they had established previously. Still, she wouldn't be able to accept the result until she understood what had happened. How did you do all that? The girl asked. If you manage to scratch me the next time, then I can explain a part of what I did, Billy said. The girl didn't like that because it would be the same as assuming that scratching would be the best she could do. In any case, they sat on the ground because she had to explain how they used magic, even though it would be the same as explaining how she breathes. Still, before they could start, a slightly older boy got up and challenged Billy. Duel with me. If you really want to, then wait for 1 hour, Billy said. Once we are done here, I will duel with you, but if he loses as well, you will have to teach me for another hour. The girl nodded while biting her lips in annoyance. A kid 3 years younger than her was making fun of her tribe. He couldn't learn anything, and still, he was treating the duels like currency trading to get what he wanted. Still, there was nothing they could do about that. All right, start, Billy said. At first, the girl was reluctant, but then eventually, she began to explain how she felt about that magical world. Basically, all the people of her tribe naturally obtained the power to control the elements. Thanks to that, she was really bad at explaining things. In fact, Billy felt that she probably felt the same way when he tried to explain how he could manipulate Earth. Still, the elementalists didn't have a system, so it didn't make any sense. After one hell of a convoluted explanation, Billy understood one thing. The elementalists started first by learning how to manipulate mana. When that happened, they would gain that glint in their eyes. How exactly do you control mana? Billy asked. Just by thinking normally, there is no secret, the girl replied. What were you doing when you realized that you could do that? Billy asked. Watching my parents train their magic, the girl replied. That seemed too simplistic. Billy saw the elementalists use their magic countless times as well, but he never felt that he could control his mana like that. He even got by some of them as well, but nothing changed. Still, it didn't look like the girl was lying.